Colleagues, good afternoon. Our roundtable is called Economics of Cybersecurity, and we gathered here today as a fun team of giants of IT security because we are all from large companies with large budgets, and we would like to have a philosophical discussion about where we are moving. When we talk about technology, we can say that technology is all about creating a certain framework of IT security, but then it all boils down to implementation, and we can often say that we have some issues such as the scarcity of people and so on, but we would not like to talk about that right now because we have just seen the presentation of a product that can resolve that HR issue, but we need expertise everywhere. We have quite a representative panel, and I'm not going to dwell on presenting you. You all had very rich careers, so I would just like to ask you to speak a bit about yourself and about how you see that development. So Dmitry Garadar, Vice President of IT Security of Tinkoff Bank. Dmitry, you've been in banks for your whole life, and actually banks seem to be the most clear organizations when it comes to IT security and cybersecurity. Well, actually, I've not always worked in the banks. My education is cryptography, and I developed data encryption tools for a certain period of time, and I also did cryptanalysis at the initial stage, and it was so interesting. I used mathematical methods and models, but then I realized that no one is interested in that, and it is easier to ask for keys than to use those data encryption tools based on mathematics. So then I moved on to banks because it was more interesting. What was your question again? How did you come to be an IT security expert? We know that when Carbonak got to Russia, Russia started feeling less comfortable. It was in 2013, 2014, and we realized the necessity of cybersecurity. I would say that actually this necessity came to be even early in 2008, and this is a good example of how we can adapt to the external environment. It seems weird to me to be answering to you and looking in a different way. So I think that it was 2008 when the first massive fraud in internet banks started taking place, and people started to develop anti-fraud systems. And this is what determined the expertise of a cybersecurity officer. Now we still have an impression that the cybersecurity expert needs to have some basic knowledge of mathematics, operating systems, networks, and so on. As for the encryption tools and all the other tools, you don't need to know about all that at the initial stage as a security guy. We actually hire very good juniors, not to really train them, but rather to show them the areas where they could develop as cybersecurity experts. But they all need to have basic skills. And I think that the problem is that it's not that we have a scarcity of security guys, but we have a scarcity of people who don't understand the essence of it, I think that it is difficult to build cybersecurity systems without the basic knowledge. Okay, clear. So you need to have strong IT experts, and they can later develop as cybersecurity experts. Well, I'm not sure about that because IT experts often think that if you just set up a security system, it will work. But it's not working like that. A security guy needs to be a bit paranoid. Yes, he does need to be paranoid because he has to be very cautious about what he's doing, and I'm sure that there is no silver bullet in terms of cybersecurity that will just live on itself and ensure the security. It cannot work, and you can just work and even do without those security tools, but you have to constantly monitor the situation. Roman, you have been working in the field of energy, which is most regulated, the second most regulated industry after cybersecurity and after banks. So what's your experience in that area? Well, I would say that I have always been of that opinion. For me, cybersecurity started initially as a certain game, and I thought that security is about protecting infrastructure. I thought that it was necessary to ensure this security against downtime and against data loss, and I haven't been thinking about business until 2016, and then I got this understanding that this can have a real impact on the real life. And it is at that point in time that I started thinking about the right way to ensure cybersecurity, and I adopted an IT approach. I haven't had any issue with the technical IT security expertise. I think that cybersecurity officers do not really need to have very advanced IT skills. They don't need to know how to develop a server very quickly. I think that we should first of all involve IT experts in our operation, because this responsibility cannot be really shared. There is this concept of security champions as of today, and it means that there should be one person in every department who would be tracking cybersecurity issues. And the goal of IT guys and cybersecurity guys is to raise awareness of their teams about how cybersecurity should work, and it's the responsibility of everyone to actually implement it. I have never thought that it's a good idea to introduce technical security experts in the team, and few companies can be something interesting to real technical experts. So inside the company, we need to have a person who understands the process and who knows how to build the right process. And the question of whether we should have a technical expert or not depends on every particular company, and depends on the particular needs and so on. If your company is a zoo, for example, it's better for you to turn to MSSP. But in Russia, MSSP has started to be developing just over the last few years. Since 2013, I have been walking on the market and asking for MSSP, and companies were telling me, okay, tell us what you want and we will provide you the team. And I said, no, I don't want your experiments, I want reliable service. So here is why the matter of experts did not emerge for me. I believe that they should be purchased in good companies. Speaking about where to find them, I think that it's a separate discussion that we can go on with further. My experience is very different. 100% of my team are technical experts, and it seems that it is necessary, at least in my experience. For example, we have people who work with compliance, who work with papers, and they are also technical experts, because otherwise, how are they going to communicate with people to merge 392p law with Cuba? And they have to talk the same language as technical experts. They need to understand how virtualization works. They need to understand administrators at their level. Without that understanding, they will not be able to actually produce anything worthy. So, and here I'm just speaking about compliance. Well, you are talking about an ideal situation. For every administrator, you need to have a good security guy with the same knowledge as the administrator. So once again, question to Vladimir, where to find these people? So interesting, you have such a big difference of opinions. Roman has managers that don't understand anything about IT. Some of you have technical experts everywhere. Roman, you had big teams in Sberbank, in LMK. Well, in Wimpelcom, I had 40 people. In NLMK, there were 400 people. The largest team was in Sberbank. As for NLMK, we worked with the metal industry, so there we had around 60 people for that part, and my biography is indeed very rich in that respect and very diverse, but at the same time, I think that it is all quite harmonious. I actually graduated in 1995, and I first worked with securing state secrets, and then I used this experience to move on to the next level, to the level of companies, to the level of industries that I was interested in. Now, speaking about who is an IT security guy, does he need to have a technical expertise or not? Now, Innotech is a key development company for VTB Group. We will have 8,000 developers and DevOpsers by the end of the year. And my goal is to make sure that DevOps transfers into DevServeOps. And we need to close 200 streams in the current situation. And we also witness bigger and bigger ambition in creating an ecosystem and a digital platform. Those are the ambitions of our management, of course. And to live up to those ambitions, we need to find resources somewhere. And we also understand that the expertise is few and far between. And we have been thinking a lot about this problem, and we finally decided that we will create those security champions in our streams. We are going to segregate and to select between developers and IT guys, between people who know this subject already. Then we are going to motivate people into some material and non-material things. We will be able to also track what is happening in the development cycle of all the key products that are launched on the market by VTB Bank. Then we will move on to this certification according to the requirements of the regulators, because we have to actually respect the provisions of the personal data protection laws, some other laws. So we believe that this is the most rational path. We can take developers and make a selection between them, motivate them, explain that cybersecurity is a culture, that cybersecurity is a value of the person who can make sure that the product does not have any vulnerabilities and does not create any serious product problems and risks that were mentioned by positive technologies during the previous presentation. There is another example. I know that Sberbank has a department that was and that is still dealing with that issue quite successfully, but finding people who would be already trained in terms of IT security is a bit challenging even for Sberbank, because they have to motivate people financially. Okay, so security should be as part of design. Well, yes, it should be an ideology. It should not be some external foreign element. For 25 years, I have been working in cybersecurity, and I know that if you come to IT and you have a certain ideas, if you have a certain vision, and if you start offering some requirements to businesses, to IT processes, and so on, you can get various response. People may go on strike and so on. So it's quite a complicated process, and it will not be easy to reach the goals of the organization and to respect the deadlines. So much easier is not to be a foreign body, but to actually get rooted into the design of the company. I quite agree with you. We also have those security champions, and this strategy has been quite fruitful. Indeed, people started coding better. There are less mistakes in the code, and the code has improved. Motivation works well as well. But I can say that it's still difficult to do without security departments, because many companies just do the development cycle, CI/CD, and the role of OPSEC is increasing several-fold. Classical security features do not work in the new paradigm and in the new infrastructure. So here, the security is the matter of values of the company, and we need OPSEC. We cannot do without those people. Of course, we can delegate things, and there are some IT security tools that are used by developers, but we also have the OPSEC department that is launching new projects, that is writing pieces of code. We have this department that is also making pipeline checks. They track how the code is being deployed in the service and so on. And this is already the task of the OPSEC, as I see it. And in such an infrastructure, the current security features will not work. Of course, we can install them on bare metal, but it will not be very successful. Okay, did I understand correctly that an application developer in his KPIs also has responsibility for security of the application, and there is always a security champion who can help with that? Well, as a rule, it is like that. We are now working with consultants on that, and it will soon be mandatory. But it has to be highlighted that it's quite difficult to make those developments in leaps and bounds. You have to motivate people, first of all, because we are humans, and the conductor should be a person that the person knows. He should speak the same language. It should be a friend who is able to explain why this context is actually important. So it's carrot and stick, mostly carrot. I mean, otherwise it will be actually against our functions, because the goals are different. Okay, Nikita, I will give the floor to you. Nikita is head of Gazprom Bank cyber attack department. So throughout your life, you have been proving that OPSEC doesn't work, and you have been trying to prove that no matter how well the developer works, there will still be some breaches. So can you give a comment on that? Can this work, and is DevSecOps possible? You know, my career and my life started with pen test and the analysis of protection level. I worked in large consulting companies, and there we tried to use not just pen tester reports, but we identified recommendations for every kind of vulnerability. I now heard in the presentation about the risk mapping, about the threat mapping for a specific organization. And then I started working for Gazprom Bank, and I was instructed to work in the area of cyber threats, which I was very interested in. In order to understand the approach to people, we need to understand the particularities of the organization. Our company is very large. There are a lot of security features, and in our department, every person has a large system assigned to him or her that he has to operate, set up and administrate. There is also the area of teaming, where we work together with SOC. We are trying to show them how to do the setup and so on. So saying that I'm just a technical guy and leave me alone will not work there. When we recruited people, one of the first our requirements was the willingness of that person, at least the willingness to work with documents, to write beautiful and clear reports for the management during pen tests and in case of incidents, if we help to investigate something, and if some threat was identified. For example, there is some new vulnerability and we need to have a particular service. We need not just to understand that, but also to explain that to management. So our requirements are quite big because not just we need to find the expert, but we also need to find the expert who is willing to work with documentation, who is willing to be multitasking, who is willing to be further developing. But the very approach used by our organization is very good to me. I do appreciate it because I can be not just a hacker who knows everything, who is a know-it-all, but I can further develop in this company. Speaking about the scope and the number of tasks, the scope is quite large and the tasks never end. And one of the important things in this context is personal motivation and initiative. Identifying cyber threats will never be automated, as I see it. I do not believe in full automation, because you can describe it well on the paper, but you will never be able to enumerate all the kinds of mistakes and all kinds of vulnerabilities. Only a human can find all that. In addition, if we speak about the search for vulnerabilities, of course we can somehow automate that. But if we speak about future threats and potential threats, we need companies to start upon this path as early as possible so that they could be at a good level already once they have to take decisions in the face of specific threats. So in that respect, we need to show initiative which actually makes working more interesting and adds motivation. You mentioned an important thing, soft skills for pen testers. So you are taking a hardcore IT guy, you're putting a suit on him, and you tell him you have to write reports from now on. Is it the case? Well, yes. And there is a positive example. We recently hired an employee who is a very technical guy, but from the very beginning we agreed that we will have to do that. And he agreed that for the personal development and for the career, you have not just to understand the code and work with the code, but to do more. Recently we got a 30th report, and his report was really beautiful. So it took him just 6 months to learn to write those reports. So motivation is key, and everything actually boils down to motivation. Some people say, I will be a technical guy throughout my life. I'm not interested in anything else but the code. And we have no questions to such people. It is an option. But the thing is that such people do not really fit our company because we don't have so many research tasks. We don't have tasks such as working on a particular piece of software over 1 month. We just don't have time for that. That is why we do not have any deep tasks like that that would be focused on research. But we have an important goal of understanding what are the mechanisms of interaction between departments, how remote access works, how emails are sent and protected, and we need to have a global vision. So if there is a vulnerability, we need to quickly understand what are the targets of that vulnerability, what is affected by it. We also need to understand, for example, that JavaScript can be launched not just in browser when you go to the website, but also if you receive an HTML email, you will still open it in the browser, right? So in order to put such things in an automated product, you need to do work that seems quite impossible in terms of its scope. May I object? Because there was this new positive technologies presentation that touched me. Yes, I agree that there will never be 100% automation, but there is automation at the operational level. You mentioned now that you need to understand what is affected by the vulnerability. But if it is clear, that means that we can automate it. It's about going away further from the routine. I suggest that people do just the improvement of process. We can move away from routine. We can save people's resources. We have now been discussing quite a nice example during the break. 20 years ago, there was a dozen of systems for a company. There was a system for accounting, a system for warehousing, and so on. Now companies have ERP systems. ERP is an integrated system that brings together all of those pieces. So we are working on the information security market. Why should I, as a customer, purchase 20 cybersecurity systems? Why should I have 20 administrators? Why should I marry them together? 10 years ago, I have been shouting everywhere, bring me MSSP. And now I'm urging everyone to automate because I want to have one product. As Volodya said, I want to have one dashboard with one figure reflecting the level of security in the company. Everyone tried to implement that, but everyone has one of its own. Well, I have such a dashboard, but underneath there are 360 various metrics. But actually this figure shows basically nothing. It shows that everything is fine, and you still need to click on it to go there underneath and see what are the current circumstances. Speaking about the first line automation, we did automate the first line, and then comes the new tasks that we also have to automate. So speaking about the operational development of SOC, it's the first and the second line that are doing that. And I would say that we have already basically automated the first line. Many things were automated indeed, and still we move on and we do hire people. We still have a lot of tasks apart from those that have already been automated. BUS, for example, it's a breach on attack simulation system. It is simulating pen tests. But what I have seen is that there is a certain black box that is doing something and that shows a report. So red teamer gets this dark red color as a result, and it cannot be really customized, and we cannot really understand how it is working. And of course, we want to write some custom rules. And take monkeys, for example, it's quite hard to write them, and it's easier to do something else than using this solution, which is not very convenient. So I'm sure that sooner or later that will be implemented, but someone has to do the development, and we do invite people who do business security. who are developing security by design processes. An ideal process is the one that doesn't need any security. As a lazy person, I'm trying not to protect anything. If there is a piece that I absolutely have to protect, I will do it, of course, but still I'm trying to reduce my load. Take a call center, for example. There is basically no need to protect a call center because people don't have any access to data whatsoever. They just have a big button call and they don't know anything else. They just see the script and that's it.
I mean, the name, Ivan, is somebody... I mean, the level of protection is very different compared to deep back office that's digging into transaction, saying the name, last name, and card numbers, etc. I mean, those people have a different way of work. They are all using terminals and they don't have any any access to any data. Yeah, let's try to establish this one. So we don't need the first line, right? Yes, people who are not here but listening to us, yes, they're probably happy because we're saying what the clients are saying. Yeah, we need to split the tasks that can be automated and those that cannot. If we talk about SOC, that is a different management, a different one, but we have automated everything that we can, but generally it takes like 3 clicks instead of 5 for a SOC specialist. Yeah, we get the playbooks, we have a bot that actually going from person to person, writing on the chat, getting those answers, parsing them, and providing additional info and analytics. So bot can make a decision based on that info, but of course, if it needs to block something, we'll probably do it manually. But for now, we're a bit scared to do automated response. Let's look at this from a different angle. The first line of the company, do we need it? Wait. The first line of defense. I know we were impressed from the positive presentation, but an important question that needs answering. Only Nikita is actually arguing with you guys. Where inside there's this 8-eyed person who is looking into 10 consoles, or 1 console, whatever, looking at this insane chain of attacks saying, oh, here's the attack, I can see it, I caught it. Is that a vendor? Is that within? Is that outsourcing? I mean, everybody has security by design, everybody has managers, so do we need a person or do we not? We're inviting people, and we need people, and there are a lot of things for them to do. Automation, IT security overall. I mean, it's like we're speaking about IT security. We have confined ourselves, but IT security is much broader and deeper, and it contains much more aspects. In addition, legal, in addition, PR, in addition, security can do the business, participate in business. And there are good examples for that, like making security services for our clients. Let me split into this. If we want neural networks to solve something, I mean, there are weak networks like our products of different kinds, so everything that can be done by them should be done by them. But when we need a big neural networks in our head, that cannot be automated. Everything related to the analysis of what will be happening in the future, everything related to how to automate that, because machines so far have not learned to do that. Machines cannot create machines that can automate. Not to mention high-volume tasks, when there are so many parameters that it's just impossible to cover them, and it's impossible to understand what parameter bottom down the summer, like the incident investigation. Something is not in the log. Okay, the infrastructure is big, and it is impossible to log everything and everything. So you need to create a separate standalone logging infrastructure, and then we use a more complex neural network, which is within our heads. So coming back to the fact that instead of 50 systems, you can deploy one called O2 and be happy about it. I mean, it's a matter of trust in the platform, as we've been saying at the backstage. the staff will qualitatively migrate from servicing L1, they'll be all servicing and actualizing the risks and moving them into the scenarios that will be landing into the infrastructure which the system should be working with, the platform, I mean. If we're working in a given paradigm, saying that there are no systems of IT security, we're saying that Security Operations Center is not developing certain context, it's not in the correlation, it would not see certain categories of events. Therefore, in the scenarios, turns out that we're not reacting to something. And that's normal, by the way, yeah. And let me finish, Dima. Just a sec. I just lost the point, but the point of contemporary IT security is in constant reflection on what we cannot see at the monument. In addition to being proactive and TI, we should not be sitting on the throne believing that we're super good. We have deployed all the connectors, we have written the rules, and now we can be sitting and waiting for the incident. Now it's all very different. In addition to the big button and O2, this is all just a matter of trust. So we need to be constantly moving like in Lewis Carroll, running as fast as you can like in Alice in Wonderland to stay at one spot. It's about IT security. And maybe a disputable point, but let me point it out. IT security doesn't need any systems whatsoever. IT security is about a different thing. I mean, often they're saying that we need this system or that firewall or that system or tune it in that way. But if you think about it, naturally, IT security doesn't need any systems. Like Security Operations Center can work without any protection tools. It's enough that to get the things that are moving through the infrastructure, correct log, correct correlation of it, and writing correct hunts on it. That's it. Where? Where? On a base. On a tree. Dmitri's presentation, I believe. I need to answer to Dmitri. I don't quite understand it. We don't need security systems. Whoa. I remember the OTP. For the number of reasons, it's just prohibited there. And what's the point, OTP? Sit on the developer's head. So it will be security by design in every iteration. And during, they have the example, but during audit, the vendor there have been actually vulnerabilities have been discovered. But question to you, do we need those people? In my view of the world, the protection on the molecular level, unless you're Sberbank, where you can afford to have a huge building of cybersecurity experts. Unless you have that money and an infrastructure for people, you'll not be able to retain that people. So this granular security should be outsourced to a provider like yours. And within, there is a person who evaluates on a higher level this entire story, business affected, additional equipment, additional deployment. And we, by the way, we often send incidents, but not data to that person. And this is where we get the person. The person cannot be an expert in the protection of Windows platform, but of course, the person needs to understand all the base fundamental things, speaking the same language with the guys who wake him up at 4 a.m. saying that in the far east of Russia there's something happening, as well as with the people who are supporting the system within the company. And by the way, I would agree that on a regular basis, they request me saying, we need CISA and the company that's doing animated films. And I'm asking them, wait, stop, why do you need that? No, they say we need CISO. It will be one, and we need also IT. And we need CSO, yeah, and also we need him to deal with security. We have no idea, we just need a CSO. And for that kind of companies, the only way, I told you, guys, you should find somebody decent who will hire an SSP for you, who will dive deep into different aspects of IT security, because it's a broad and multifaceted issue, and you'll not be able to find a person. He'll either be lying, saying that he knows everything and can do everything for you, or he will do it very poorly. He will not be lying, he will just be believing it. Sincerely, yes, there's a number of people who believe that they know what's right. And all the rest, the best practice is just squeezing money out of people. Yes, and MSSP service, I mean, I'm not familiar with the market, probably you guys know it better, but a couple of years ago, the market was developing very poorly, and SMEs have no idea why they need security. Maybe now the ransomware push will make them do that. But recently we've been talking with serious people, and one of the designer teams, just designer company, with a number of clients, by the way, I believe. They've published some RDP online, they had the client base stolen, etc., and they encrypted their all infrastructure. Surprise. I mean, that's a medium-sized business with a turnover of 1 billion rubles. Like $1.5 million. Yes, I've been saying we need to think about children, the pensioners, and scalable prefab service for SMEs, because they will never have a CSO. We need to provide a cheap, scalable solution for children, the elderly, and SMEs. First and foremost. Yes, we've been talking about elderly people. Kaspersky is talking about that. This is a common problem. So we need to deal with SMEs. Why? Why? We can buy anywhere. Accounting for outsourcing, website management, but cybersecurity cannot just be bought as a package service for SMEs. Minimum, medium, Excel, whatever. Do you have this problem in Sberbank? Are you making this in Sberbank? Which branch of Sberbank are you asking about? Roman was saying about people who are impossible to be retained because of qualification. And I'm really curious about the situation. It's about the same thing. We're speaking about infrastructure, but not malware security infrastructure. That's a bit contradicting to what I see in the market. For a year and a half, we've been looking at administrative bodies, and the attacks are pretty potent. It's integration to API. That is high tech. This is very complex. And even though in public bodies there are security principles, still there's a feeling that this sort of thing could be happening in energy supply, banking. And I have a feeling that it's happening. And by design, it just does not work because we are never able to understand what's beyond the border. In 2017, we all been covered by Vault 7, and we found out that it's really bad with SMEs. Now we find out every week that things are bad. How long has it been? Yes, 2 weeks ago we found out that Wi-Fi does not exist, that we should not be using Wi-Fi because it's hacked by default. So what can we do with that? What's your opinion on that, Nikita? I believe you'll be able to say that. Well, we can split the issue because things we've been discussing, we can give them interesting tasks or something. I mean, that was the intro. It's a bit broader. Even, can we, for example, hunt our colleagues from the teams or companies in the market, and whether that's ethical whatsoever? This issue of offering interesting spectrum of works to professionals that will make them exciting in addition to money. We have a few minutes to speak, and I'm gradually transitioning to the subject related to people. At a certain point, we've been discussing a lot whether it's ethical at all to get agreements between businesses.
Творческой деятельности, профессионального развития, экспертом в области информационной безопасности, насколько вправе
whether the employers can come to an agreement and have some agreement that employees will not be going from one company to another. And usually, these people, they're not furniture. These are people who are making decisions about their professional future, their motivation. So, really, non-solicitation agreement here is an issue. I mean, we need to talk about this. Nobody's trying to do something bad against the employees. Nobody is going to do anybody a bad favor. We're just looking people for a particular task at the moment. We're looking for people who are motivated. In terms of remuneration, we can compete to those who are shaking up the IT security market, like Sberbank, Rostelecom, and other big organizations. But never do we believe that the major thing when we hire is some sort of interesting scope of work for a person. That's not a major issue. That's why, returning to the subject of staff management and where do we get resources to solve IT security issue at the level of the business subject and IT security market, we believe that this is the right thing to do because we have a chance to make a shift. Only when expert community is ambitious enough, understands very well, every individual in the community understands what's his or her short-term objectives and mid-term objectives. Again, these are people who are bringing up kids. They have teenage kids, student kids. Or they might participate in education, like the campus in Sochi, where there is a cyber polygon, cyber boot camp, a specialized faculty for this, with an opportunity to fill in the gaps in the IT security market in Russia. When we have been doing that, nobody actually cared. Everybody wanted to go in marketing or in law. We were just engineers, and nobody knew what our future is. Today, I do understand that we need to catch up, and there will be a gap, a time gap. But in a number of years, we need to start our long-term game in 3 years, maybe 5, when we do realize that our today's agenda will be already irrelevant. I mean, we'll be speaking about different tasks, different set of tasks, about different tasks, and not about where to find people. Yes, we're also participating in the series, and I've been thinking about a lot. We're probably going to do the master's program for a series in Sochi. We have Tinkoff Education, You can participate and study IT security. We have hosted a number of schools. We have gathered the people from there, and there should be a couple of caveats. Serious camp is like a summer camp, summer boot camp. Potentially, this is actually quite a vast geography. I mean, it's not a solution to the problem. These are the best students, smart students, winners of competitions. Altogether, it will be possible to cherry pick people from there, but it's not the solution to the problem. And in addition to what they teach in series, probably there are math faculties there. And it is possible to add some IT security classes, but if we study Kuber today, I mean, it will be irrelevant in a number of years. Different technologies that will be irrelevant in like 5 years. Therefore, without fundamental knowledge, whatever you teach people, it's irrelevant. That's why serious summer camp might be, serious school might be essential, because we can actually teach people with a decent background. But teaching cybersecurity in a couple of weeks or months, probably not. I don't believe in school children as students. Probably Oilers can study Oilers, energy guys can teach energy guys, but if Solar, Bison, Rostelecom, SBR need to be training school children and students for cybersecurity, then those kids are being hired, they get some experience, and go to a different business. I don't believe into this internal teaching. I had 3 cases personally. Only one person actually worked. Only after switching the job, by the way. Psychologically, it's very hard often for people to switch because he will always be a sort of an understudy. Yes, we need to be changing this sort of job. What does an ordinary company do in this situation? This is the same thing, from integrators and vendors. And any sort of bans on people hunting, I believe that is ridiculous. Ridiculous. Yeah, that works in a number of cases. That only works this way. Question to the audience, if I may. I mean, there are quite a few people who do security. Please raise your hand if at your job you are hired because you've seen the announcement on anywhere. Not friends, but you've seen kind of the announcement anywhere. You've seen the job announcement. Okay, I've never heard IT security guys hired via headhunter. It's just people calling one another saying, "Do you know the guy?" But how do people get into this circle is a mystery to me. Yeah, I can raise a hand. I actually, in my latest company, came from the outside, from the market. I didn't know anybody in the company. Yes, we are hiring in the open market. You can send to HR Tinkov. Please do. Yeah, just go on stage and get the job. I like this case of Rostelecom. It's the right thing to do. Teaching people in a big company and then hiring it into other companies. We can bring up the person, but teaching is a different issue. Okay, paying money to do that. I see. I've been working in the Western consulting company. They have this mentality, just business. It's not that there is certain ban to fishing specialists, solicitation, hunting. We've been looking for a pen tester. We approached the partner. Dear partner, we said, can we hunt this guy? We'll just buy this guy. They said, no problem. That was not a problem whatsoever. We sent the CV and in about 4 hours there is a call from the vice president and he said everything that he thinks. The vice president of that company where the employee initially worked. So it was more the fact that it still works according to some unwritten rules. There was this big billing company that invited trainers to on SQL PSQL development. So for 3 months, people actively study PSQL development and decently start writing statements and requests. And for that, you must work for a month in a company. And I've been working in that company that does billing for 2 months. But I know SQL, which is good for me, I guess. It did work. In addition, the market needs donors, blood donors, HR donors, staff donors. I would disagree with the idea that it's impossible to take the student and make them specialists, professionals. I mean, we only need to establish a clear specialization program because when they teach to some general things, understanding paperwork, but there's no practice, there's no specialization. We've been talking about this with Sirius, suggesting to make a fully fledged university program, 5 years long, with specialized disciplines. We can teach pen testers, architects, cyber intelligence experts, methodologists, specializing in IT security, building up those people that I have been looking for, and it's very hard to find them with decent background. You observe people, everybody's looking around, headhunter, there's some fake info on CV, but when it comes down to the actual experience of the person, turns out that it's complicated. In this particular part, I mean, if we need to define specialization with the future corrections, with the potential for future correction, because environment is changing, tech stack isn't changing, ideologies are changing, not to mention compliance. This is something that you can learn, I guess. Yes. How many businesses here, by the way, have decent internships? By the way, there's the word economics in the title of the sections. Why would the commercial enterprise invest in that? Yes, that's what we are doing. People don't know what they care about. They quit the universities with, they graduate from the university with a relatively generalistic knowledge. And you go to a big business, you learn to study turbines, then you go to Formula One, bolid, and what do you do with it? Yeah, in conclusion, I want to say that we have been able to bring up professionals in our security center operations. We've had quite a few guys who studied at the university, then worked at the first line, and now we have this centers of potency, and 80% of the people solve efficient tasks. Otherwise, people are studying. Will you share? Dear colleagues, we're outside of timing. I don't think that we have time for questions. Therefore, I believe that I should give a summary. We're big guys. We are in charge of the market. But even for a big company, the choice is not obvious, whether you take people from the outside and teach them internally. For everybody, it's a challenge. More often than not, people need, companies need people for infrastructure, for infrastructural task, but not for a particular threat. And that contradicts. Yes, we're just covering the holes, all of them. Yes, and hopefully our boat will be more and more sturdy day by day. I think we've been able to solve some problem. And I'd like to send a special welcome to Alexei Lukatsky.